So, hi all and welcome. Thank you for sharing your time with us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marlie and I'm the new president of Putnam Pride and a queer artist myself. Um, we were going to be joined by some other board members, but they're all way too busy with their very important lives. So, it's just me and you all today. So, first, let's introduce each of you all, and I want you all to have a space to say hello and tell us a little bit about yourselves. First, we're going to go with Meish.
Okay. I'm Meish. I use a handle made by Meish. I'm based in Charleston, but not originally from West Virginia. And I paint with acrylics and I do vinyl cuts. And my artwork is kind of very nature based, very positive, and a lot of animals, bright colors, whimsical. Yeah.
Okay, Dan.
My name is Dan Means, and I am a West Virginia native, born and raised. I work a lot with, I would say, kind of like 3D-esque type things, but I do paint. Um, I am the owner of a small business on paper, but I like to refer to it in practice as more of like a movement, and just dedicated to reshaping our state and region's narrative.
Okay, Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Murphy. I'm a photographer, born and raised here in West Virginia. I'm from Huntington. Originally, with my photography, I do mostly documentary and portrait photography. I've had the pleasure of working with musicians, drag artists, authors, activists, things like that, and really enjoy getting to tell people's story in a visual way. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
And Sassa.
I'm Sassa Wilkes, also a West Virginia native. I live in Huntington now. I grew up in Barbersville, which is close to Huntington. I work in tons of different mediums. I kind of go in little phases of things I want to work with, whatever I'm feeling at the moment, from like monumental sculpture to stone carving, oil painting, mural work. Lately, I've done a lot of community mural work, so I kind of like to mess with a lot of different stuff. Music, poetry, all kinds of different writing. I kind of can't pick one, I guess.
I feel that. So let's hop into the discussion. So the first thing I want to talk about is with your art specifically. What does intuition versus intention look like in your art?
I don't mind to hop in first. I'll take the first dive here. um, I think intuition and intention are really kind of like, I mean, as far as my kind of art form goes with photography, it's kind of the backbone of it, especially in that I, do documentary stuff. So in those scenarios, you're going into situations not fully knowing what's going to happen. And you're kind of there to observe and just like kind of capture very real, authentic moments as they're unfolding. It's a collaboration, so I'm kind of like reacting in that way with them. And then just as far as intention goes, I think it's really important to tackle anything that you're doing like artistically, creatively with intention. Like with photography, like everything that you incorporate in that frame matters, and everything it does something to the story, to the scene. And so, like when you're, kind of approaching that, like even the angle in which you're shooting matters, like what you decide and decide not to incorporate matters, like and everything. It's all like you need to have like intention with everything that you're kind of bringing to the table there. Nothing should be accidental.
I have a ton that I could say about this question. I like what you were saying, Justin, because I think everything does kind of matter, even if it's not just photography. Like little choices always get noticed and do matter. I feel like I always use both in a lot of my work, but it depends totally on what I'm doing. Like I one time decided I wanted to write a book that was kind of like an art novel, and I wrote a very loose outline, but then every Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember, I went down and wrote another chapter, and I let that be a surprise to me in the same way that like the surrealists might have done, sort of automatic drawing and not think too much about it. And then other work I plan every tiny, minute detail of it, because it has to be, like, if it's a big mural that has to be complete in a certain amount of time, there's no room for, like, surprises exactly, so those need to be planned out meticulously. My favorite way to work, though, would be a combination where I'm, like, really detailed in my planning, but then I leave a lot of room, so as I get to actually making the work, I can sort of ditch some of that. When something happens that was a little bit unexpected, I can be like, okay, I'm not, like, married to that original idea. I like to leave a lot of room for surprises to happen.
With, like, painting, and when I'm creating a piece, a lot of times I'll add things that I see when I'm hiking into that piece, but I want to make sure that things are, like, seasonal. So I'm not going to put a flower that blooms in the fall in a piece that I intend to be the spring piece. And same with, like, I do a lot of foraging, so certain mushrooms come out certain times a year. I don't want to make something in a piece, again, like, that to me doesn't make sense. So I try to add as much detail in that way too, so that people who are also foragers or, like, outdoorsy people, go hiking a lot, will take notice in that, hopefully.
Okay, so up next, are there any reoccurring themes or symbols in your all's art?
I add a lot of ferns to my artwork and fireflies, because those are things that I find calming a lot. And animals. I'm really connected with animals, and so I add those. Animals playing old-time instruments. That's something I don't play an instrument, but we hang out with a lot of old-time musicians, me and my partner. And if I'm making a piece that has an animal playing a banjo, I also want to make sure, and again, like, make sure that it's accurate, so that the hand position is accurate, and I will ask them to look at the piece too before I'm finished with it. If it's a fiddle player or mandolin player, I want to make sure that those hand positions and the fingers look correct. Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know, it's also a lot of fun just being a part of that scene.
Love that.
I think something for me is that I really like for my photos to feel timeless and everything. So, like, when I, like, approach things, I tend to, like, not like to, like, kind of think about maybe something that's trending or, you know, something like that, or, like, I like to kind of, like, maybe, like, omit, like, kind of signs of more current technology, just because I really, you know, I really like for photos to kind of stand the test of time. And I like for those time periods to kind of, like, be ambiguous sometimes, and to kind of, like, make you wonder, like, you know, like, could this have been shot in the, you know, like, in this time period, or this, or just, like, just kind of see what that brings up for the individual, kind of, like, looking at it.
So I feel like a lot of the times, depending on what I'm making, I notice a lot of my, like, inspiration comes from a lot of the times, like, either childhood memories or, like, people or things that are close to me. Either, you know, it could be anything, like something I've kept throughout the years or something like that. Also, I think, now that I kind of think about it, sometimes when I do, like, drawing or masks, like, sometimes the, like, limbs, like, big ears, or, like, their legs will be extra long or something like that. And I think that almost comes from if you've seen me in person, I'm kind of like a very lanky individual. So it's almost like a reclaiming, like, the, I don't know, like, given a power to that almost, is like, you know, it's something not to be ashamed of, but something to, you know, to create or to love or to put into your art.
There's a couple things that I've had recurring in my work. Some of them are accidental. Like, when I used to do portraits a lot more often than I have lately, there was a circle that would show up in my portrait. It's not like it would just show up. I mean, I would put it there, but I wasn't thinking about putting it there. It was one of those things I just did, and it became a thing before, like, people would tell me that they saw that, before I even realized that I was doing it repeatedly, exactly, and it looked kind of like, almost like a halo kind of thing. And I used to use a lot of gold leaf in my oil paintings also. I'm really interested in mixed media stuff, and now I'm interested, I haven't really done it yet, but I'm interested in pairing things that don't really go together, like, typical, like, Renaissance layered oil painting, but with collage elements in it. Like, two things that don't seem to go together like that, I think would be interesting.
So, when do you guys know that a piece is done? For me, it's when the fear sets in that I'm going to mess it up. That's how I know, like, okay, I'm done. Let's not touch it anymore.
That's tough, and I get asked that so often. I don't think. Have y'all ever heard of chicken sexing? It's like a job where someone used to look at baby chicks and be able to tell their gender immediately or whatever, because you have to separate them if you're going to be dealing with chickens in your job. And no one could describe how they were doing it. There was just like master chicken sexers that would know how to do it, and they would have an apprentice sit there and do it while they watched them, and they were like, yes, no, and eventually it would just somehow, they would know how to do it too, but they couldn't describe how they know how to do it. I think you have to screw it up a whole bunch first. Like, you have to really go too far and be like, I have just fucked this whole thing up and really regret it, and then later you can come back around to being, I don't know, I think this is like an intuition that bakes in after you've messed it up a bunch of times. That's a really weird analogy, and I'm sorry, but that's what it made me think of.
Love it.
It's so funny that you use that, because like I've never fully been able to describe when something is done, and it's like you just described it perfectly, because I almost feel like when I'm making something, I hyper edit a lot, and like sometimes I'll even leave a piece and say that's done and come back 2 days later and then add something to it, and then it's finished. So it's like, it's almost just like you just know, like, when it's done, at least.
For me, I used to say as soon as I signed it, it was done. And that was my like indicator of like, okay, that's the last thing. But recently I started looking at some older pieces and being like, no, I think I'm to the point where I have more that I want to add to it. So it's, and especially with the pieces that I do now, it's more of an intuition. Like I also don't want to like overthink it and work on it too much, but when I get to a point with a painting, I look at it, and if I don't feel like it's done yet, I'll set it aside, sometimes for like 8 months even. Like, it's taken me, I just finished 2 paintings last week when we had the ice storm that I've been waiting to finish for 3 years.
I think with me, like, I think a lot of people think that photography kind of stops after you've clicked the button and everything, but I do, most of my work is done digitally and everything, so like I am lucky in the regard that like if I do something that I don't like to a photo, there's that handy couple something on the keyboard and it just goes away. That's so nice. But there's a lot of responsibility like with the editing process too. When I went to journalism school and we learned things like about how just like adding contrast or like shadow or taking it away, like that also impacts how like an image can be received. An example is that was a cover, I think it was maybe Newsweek or something like that, during the O.J. Simpson trial, where they like had like a really heavy contrast. He looked like in the shadows that looked very menacing and implied guilt before like anything had like been decided in the trial, and everything, and that can like really impact public opinion. So I guess for me, like I know when a photo like is like right, like it's hit the sweet spot where I'm finished with it. When I just like, there's no real technical aspect to like how I know that. I just like it when I feel that like I get the emotion maybe that I felt when I was taking it, and really feel like I've like kind of captured the spirit of the moment. Like that's kind of how I kind of just like, okay, I got it.
So now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the LGBT aspect of each of you. So I'd like if you all could tell me about growing up queer in Appalachia, what that was like for you specifically. So, where you're from in Appalachia, what time did you really home in on that part of your identity, um, and if there was any tension between being Appalachian and being queer.
So for me, so I'm from Huntington originally, but like I grew up in the Westmoreland area, so it's like Wayne County, but Huntington city limit, so it's like a kind of like in between kind of place. But I went to high school in Wayne County at Spring Valley High School, and growing up was hard. Experienced a lot of harassment, a lot of bullying at school. I was harassed and bullied for being gay before I even was able to kind of like come to terms with that myself. So that's like kind of like hard to kind of like reconcile your identity like that when you're kind of like when your introduction to it is being you told that that's what you are and that that's like a bad thing. um, so that was rough, and I grew up in a Southern Baptist kind of culture as well, which is like not known for being the most friendly to the queer community. So that was all tough. I think I like on some level always knew there was something different about me. Like maybe for a long time not being able to quite put my finger on it. Um, but I think I started like really coming to terms with that, and it was a very kind of back and forth, like like teeter totter kind of thing. Like coming to terms with that, like when I was in high school, started coming out to like a few people, like people that I felt were very safe, and that I knew like without a doubt would be accepting, and I wasn't gonna have to worry about them outing me to people, but before I was ready, and things like that. I mean, I graduated high school in 2006, so it was a very different time than what it is now, and everything. And we didn't have things like GSAs and groups like that at school. It was still a pretty taboo topic at the time. So that, it wasn't until like I entered college till I felt like I was like really able to kind of like be open with that, and like kind of telling my family about it like didn't exactly happen on my own terms either. But yeah, so that was like kind of difficult, and that was a long road, but I definitely felt for a very long time that like my Appalachian and queer identity was in like conflict with each other, right? And I think that is actually from like kind of both sides of the aisle a little bit. Like, like on one hand, I didn't really feel like accepted or that I had an entitlement to like, the culture surrounding my Appalachian identity because it did seem to be so soaked in like a like Southern Baptist, religious kind of culture. And then for like from like, like the queer side, like and everything, like, especially at that time, narratives that you got from like queer people were often like after like they had like kind of like escaped from whatever small town that they like lived in and everything and made it to like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, like these big city meccas and everything, and that's like that's when their kind of like queer lives could like finally begin and everything. So like those felt like in direct opposition to me, and really I didn't even like begin to start to kind of reconcile those two more until I was like approaching 30. I went back to school and had a really incredible professor at Marshall, who's now a very close friend of mine, Tisha Baumgardner, who just like opened my eyes to just like the like nuance and complexity of Appalachian narratives and it not kind of being this like one monolithic thing. and that like this, like the kind of tapestry that makes like Appalachian culture is woven with many other identities and many different contributions from different people. So I think it was like a longish kind of road to get there, but being able to kind of reconcile those identities, you know, even as late as it seemed, was really impactful and just, yeah, helped me kind of see things a lot differently.
Hop in and answer that too. I was in elementary school in the late 80s, so, and I knew from the time I was really, really young that there was something so different about me that I was not supposed to talk about even. Like, I didn't even know exactly what it was, but I definitely knew it was a thing that I was supposed to sort of hide from people. And you know, you get that from lots of overt cues. Like Justin, I grew up in a very Southern Baptist situation too, so it's some of those cues are not so subtle. They're in the church and they're telling you outright, beating you over the head with it, and then some of them are just like the way you behave and people sort of disapproving and making faces that are disapproving. Like, kids pick up on that stuff really quick. So I knew pretty immediately from my earliest memories that there were parts of me that just I needed to squash somehow. And when I was young, even in high school, really, I don't remember any form of representation of queer identity, certainly not trans identity. I think the very first time I ever saw anything that had anything to do with trans identity in pop culture would be Boys Don't Cry. And I do remember seeing people watching the L Word and having a trans character that was really treated super poorly on that show. So by the time I did see any kind of representation, it was like, okay, but you're going to be murdered if you're like this. So there's just a certain part of your brain that can shut things down and be like, that's not a safe possibility for you to explore. So, and I think that's kind of normal and almost healthy in some situations. I think shutting a lot of that down when I was younger kept me safe in a lot of ways. And I don't, I mean, I agree with a lot of the stuff you said, Justin, about Appalachian identity and like people moving away and then getting to be their true selves. Like, there was never some, for me, it was just such a slow, long entry into social acceptance of who I am that it was like, okay, here's another show, here's another like artist who's coming out publicly and talking about this stuff. It's not ever really been in Appalachia that I found that exactly until I was, you know, almost 40 and started making friends in Huntington that had a really tight-knit kind of queer community. And I mean, I feel that now, but in so many ways it's like things are going back the other direction, obviously. So yeah, I used to feel like my identity was sort of at odds with where I am. I don't feel that way anymore at all, because I think you could probably feel that anywhere. I think I've never felt normal or typical or whatever. Not, I mean, because of queer identity, because of trans identity, whatever, but also just because I'm a stone cold weirdo. Like, the stuff I'm into is weird. It's never typical. It's like when we do those personality tests in school, I'm always the one over there. It's like my dot is like way over there, and the stuff I've been into is like not, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like I vibe with the majority for whatever reason on any level. So I think I would feel like kind of an outsider no matter what, maybe, unless I was only hanging out with really queer artists and stuff, maybe, which sounds like a vibe now. We need to set that up. We need to make a camp.
I've moved here 4 years ago. Like, I've never had such a strong queer community that I've been a part of, and I did not expect to find that here. Like, I grew up in Michigan. I've lived in Indiana, near a college town. I was out in Oregon for a bit, but it was really surprising to find a very supportive community here in Charleston, and that's been really nice and helpful, and to like meet other queer artists and activists.
I feel like I feel like a lot of people here kind of have that same, which I was raised Pentecostal. So I totally get the, not so subtle and then overly, just outright hate speech to you. So a lot of my like early years, I like hated West Virginia. I hated the region. I wanted to get out, as quick as I could. And I just turned 30 this year, but I didn't fully come out till I was 25, when I started to kind of see like, kind of like what Mish said, like I didn't expect to find it here, but when I did find it here, like I felt comfortable enough to, to come out and then also to create additional spaces for people to also feel comfortable and to come out. So kind of just a short.
So let's discuss the intersections between your art and your identity a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with a couple short questions. Do you all in any way feel that your identity, being queer, influences your art at all?
This is everything. I think it's probably at least a huge reason, if not the reason, that I started making art to begin with and was drawn to that. Because I do very specifically remember being in high school and thinking, I even wrote it on the edge of some piece of pottery or something, some little poem, and the gist of it was that I was making something because I didn't have the words to say what I needed to say. Like, I even was very aware of that when I was younger, that it was like a language somehow. So I think I was drawn to that art space because it was just a rare moment where I felt like something that I was feeling was able to come out somehow, even without a label. So I think it's why I make art, and now it's just a little bit hard to separate myself from my artwork. So being an openly trans, openly queer person in Appalachia, making art with community members like I often do, like big huge murals with lots of people, and that's just like immediately almost like a political statement. I don't want it to be necessarily. I'd like to just make art and have it not be about anything, but sometimes it's just being visible and being open about who I am, I think gives it that flavor no matter what. So even if the artwork doesn't look like it's about anything queer, it kind of is because of who I am and the people, hopefully the younger people that are seeing me do it, that feel empowered by that somehow.
Yeah, like Sassa said, like it's impossible for me to separate the two because like I mean the way that I look at it too is just like like there are many components of my identity to kind of make a full realized, like that makes me a unique person, that makes the way that I view the world unique and everything. And so like those are all intertwined and overlapping at all times. I don't think there's a way to separate that. And then, I think like with my work, like no matter what I'm photographing, like I am viewing the world through like a queer lens, pun kind of intended there. um, but I'm viewing the world through a queer lens, and I think like queer folks see the world differently. And there's been many times that like I have had to like document like people in very like sensitive situations. And like that could be anything to like I've worked with people who are like fighting for their right to exist in the world. Like I've photographed rallies and protests for trans rights and for trans youth. I've worked with trans youth at the Appalachian Queer Youth Summit, and documented their kind of summer camp experience, and that like kind of being such a kind of like targeted topic like in the current climate and everything. I've worked with people who are living with substance use disorder. I have worked with people experiencing food insecurity or, you know, extreme poverty, like you know, all kinds of different things. And I do think that it, like, my queerness, like, really, like, has, I think, taught me lessons in compassion and everything, and, you know, kind of like feeling like just by merely, like, you know, existing in the world, like, that, like, you're making people angry, and that people will just inherently be really cruel, because of that and everything. And so I think it, like, has given me, like, a really unique lens to just, yeah, kind of try to see the world with, like, compassion and kindness, and, you know, meeting folks where they are and everything. And I think that is largely attributed to, you know, my queer experience.
And so when I first started doing greeting cards, I wanted to make sure there are greeting cards for people who are queer or who have family members, or loved ones. And I like trying to connect people. That's why I decided to do a lot of greeting cards. And it's nice when people pick up a greeting card with, you know, like a queer symbol on it, rainbow, like, you know, love and ASL. And they tell me who they're going to send it to, and a lot of times they get really excited when they pick it up, and they're like, oh, this is who I'm going to send it to. It's their birthday, or I just want to send it to them because I'm thinking about them. But a lot of the artwork that I do, that has like queer imagery, is more geared towards like greeting cards or stickers or things that have like a smaller price point on them too when I'm vending. And are more, you know, accessible for a lot of people.
What responsibilities, if any, do you feel as a queer artist in today's climate?
Just quickly, I mean, even to, you know, strip everything away, just to remain visible and to continue creating, to, you know, let others know that, you know, times are dark, and, you know, we do have hope in these pockets, but, you know, just to remain visible is one of my biggest, you know, responsibilities I feel right now, just to, you know, kind of keep the fire of hope alive for anybody else who might, you know, because not everybody can, you know, handle, I guess, everything the same, you know, like how I handle it is different than how somebody else handles it. And, you know, sometimes people just need to see, you know, someone, you know, continuing on to, you know, to know that, you know, there's hope and that they can continue on.
On to that, being visible and being comfortable with who I am is really important, and being confident, especially when I'm vending and in public spaces. I think it's really important through my artwork that I bring a positive message across, and I like making happy artwork, and just giving people a little bit more hope through that art too.
I think we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves and have a lot of understanding for everybody that's in the queer community, because, like Dan said, like, not everybody deals with things the same. People have different temperaments and different thresholds for what they can handle, and different phases of life, different ages, stuff that they are dealing with right now that, like, maybe normally people could be visible and be out there, but there's something really tricky that they're dealing with and they just can't handle one more thing. So I think the deepest responsibility is to take care of yourself first, in a way that means you understand what you can handle and not take on more than that, because I've done that before and it can put you in a really, really bad place. And I personally feel a responsibility. It's not my responsibility to educate anybody, but I do it a lot. It shouldn't be anybody's responsibility necessarily, but if somebody feels like they have the capacity to do it and they have patience for people that don't think like they do, I think that can be kind of a cool thing to provide somebody with education, because I know for a fact that I'm the only trans person that a lot of people know personally. So just in my circle, a lot of people have told me that. So to me, that's like, okay, well, I'm not going to act differently because of that or like play a role because of that. But I do take that seriously. I mean, I do, that's part of why I try to communicate really openly. And I have a high tolerance for being around people who hate my guts because I just don't, ultimately, it doesn't really mean anything. I'm not going to say I don't care. I do care about a lot of things, but ultimately, somebody hating me doesn't mean anything to me in the long run. Like, that doesn't really change my life. If it's just politically, it can, but you know what I mean. Just one on one, it's like I can walk away from that and be perfectly fine. So I kind of like spending time in places with people that I'm not supposed to be around, or that are told they're not supposed to be around me, or we're not supposed to like each other, because really often we can find some commonality. And I have a really high tolerance for at least temporarily overlooking the places where we would butt heads and just finding that commonality. I like to make artwork with people who think they should hate me because it's just, I mean, really, if you get past all that and just spend time talking to somebody and looking them in the eye, there's something disarming about that. And it's like, wait a minute, like, I thought I hated your guts, but you're at least cool in this one tiny way. Like, you might be a monumental prick in every other way, but you're kind of cool about this one thing. Like, I can usually find something about people that I enjoy. So I like it. I like finding that. But there's, you know, having said that, there's times where I just feel fragile, and I don't make myself do it if I feel fragile. I mean, I'll go dead silent for months and just go out in my garden and nobody will see or hear from me, and I don't feel a responsibility to come out and say something until I'm absolutely ready to do it.
I think everyone, regardless of, you know, like whether you're an artist or not, I think everyone has a responsibility of what they put out into the world. And so in particular, I think that artists and people who are creating things like have a responsibility for, you know, what they're putting out there. Like just kind of like what are your motives? What is the message that like you are putting out there? Is it coming from a place of like uh, you know, like, are you trying to educate people? Or are you trying to like celebrate something? Like, it's just like it really matters what your intent and the impact of it is. As a photographer, I feel that pressure immensely, particularly because like I often, you know, like it's other people's faces in my work. You know, like I'm behind the camera, and so like it's all done in collaboration with someone or something else and everything. So how I'm representing a person is a lot of responsibility. I'm reminded of I had the extreme pleasure of working with two pretty well-known drag artists in the West Virginia scene, Nishine and Indigo Richwood. I just like, to anyone, if you've never seen them perform, run, don't walk. They're incredible. And working with them was just like such a wonderful experience. Did this photo shoot with them with a story attached to it for Huntington News Network, and so it was this really fun shoot we did on a farm, and it was this simple life meets West Virginia kind of like vibe to it, and you know, like we just had the best day, and was really proud of what we created on that day and everything. And somehow that story with the photos and all that stuff kind of got onto one of these right wing conservative like groups and everything. And then it was just like for days, it was just an onslaught of like, and yes, like most of them were, I'm sure, bots and everything, but you know, this did come from someone and everything. And there was just like this onslaught of like people telling us that we should die and that like we don't deserve to live and like really, really hateful things. And I'm not going to pretend that that wasn't hard for me. It was, but like when that started to kind of unfurl, like I just like was kind of just heartbroken for, you know, like to have something that was creative out of joy be kind of treated in that way. And I was particularly worried about Nishine and Indigo because one, their faces were the one, like, you know, like, yes, I made the work and they can find out who I am and everything, but that's their image. That is their face. That, you know, like, that is like kind of on this stage and everything. And, you know, I was really concerned with them, and they're, you know, they're also younger. They're in their 20s and everything. And, you know, I was certainly much more fragile at that age and everything and everything. And, but, you know, I will say that, like, I checked in with them as that was all happening, and they were just like, we don't care. We know what we're doing. We know who we're pissing off. Like, we don't care. Like, we are nothing but grateful to have been able to have, you know, created this. Like, you know, like, we're really good. So, like, you know, they in true punk rock spirit were just like, we're pissing off the right people kind of thing. But I did feel like a responsibility that I really care for the people that I work with.
And now I would love if you all could all plug your socials. Our editor will go to town on them. But I just want you all to say them so that we have them, and anything that you guys are working on, tell us about it.
I'm easy to find. I think all my socials are I am Sassa, some version of that, but there's also not very many Sassas, so you can just look up my name. Um, and what I'm currently working on right now that I would love to tell people about is a mural that's going to be inside the West Edge factory. Um, it's called Solidarity, and it's 120 feet long, and it is focused on the West Virginia Mine Wars. I'm doing it in collaboration with the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum, and the goal is to have 1,000 people contribute to this mural. So it'll be definitely the most people I've ever gotten together to do a thing like this, and it's going to be a year long. So you can learn about that on my website, which is just iamsassa.com. And we'll do first weekend stuff every month at West Edge Factory too. So the first Saturday of each month will be an art market from 11 to 4, and people can come and contribute to the mural there. There's a big event on May 1st, which was like kind of like the original Labor Day before the government came in and changed it. That event is just called May Day. And I would love for everybody to come to that. The people from the Mine Wars are going to come and give a talk about our labor history, and there will be a lot of opportunity to add to the mural. My goofy marching band Hoot and Holler is going to be playing, and some other musicians that played at the Bernie Rally in Matewan recently, they'll be there. So that's going to be like a super fun time.
My socials are made by Meish, Facebook, Instagram. I also have a somewhat developed website, madebymeish.com. And I currently am working on my first mural project in Charleston. Super excited because I usually paint tiny, and it's going to be at Ecolit is opening up a new creative reuse center called Marigold, which is going to be really exciting. And they're going to be fencing in an area outside of Ecolit in the future to do, they want to do night markets, they want to have live music and workshops, garden. So I'm really excited to have my first public art mural up.
My socials are my you know, like, specific photography Instagram is Out of the Attic Photography. That's where I post most of my work. Admittedly, it's been a little quiet on the page lately. It's been a very busy season and that kind of thing. But you can also, like, folks can follow me on my personal too. It's like Moody_Garland_. I'm on there a lot too. And what I'm working on right now, like, I just kind of signed on to working a lot as a production assistant on a documentary that I am doing until the end of the year and everything. That takes up a lot of my time, but that has created an opportunity for me to have a little bit more bandwidth for my own kind of personal work. I've done largely client-based work over the past like couple years with lots of nonprofits, ACLU of West Virginia, Mountaineer Food Bank, different places like that. So I've had to kind of scale back on that kind of work and then like have a little bit more sustainability. So I'm just really excited to kind of dive into some kind of like personal interest work, like especially through the next year. And all that being said too, if anyone's got an idea and you want to collaborate, give me a holler. I'm always open to collaborations and yeah, feel free to give me a shout.
So mine, you can kind of find me on everything. It's almost like TikTok is my main platform, which is Appalachian Journey, and then Instagram is the same, and then Facebook is the same. Facebook is a little dead of the three, just because it's full of bots, and every time I post something, it just gets spammed to heck. So I'm not really working on anything right now. It's been a busy few months, and I'm trying to take some time to work on some things that'll kind of take me to, I guess, like the next level. So I'm kind of using this downtime as just to rest and to recoup, just so I don't burn out.
Hey, thank you all so much for talking with me today. I was so worried about doing it on my own, and then I was terrified when we couldn't get it to record, so thank you very much, Dan. That was very scary. Thank God Sassa wasn't there to witness all of that. But I really like that you all came and helped Putnam Pride kick off the virtual speaker series.